It's my band notice. This is a racist Matthew Williams. The white supremacist. This wasn't supposed to be what the video was about, but just as I started the live, he go and hand this paper. So let me just address this real quick. Dear Mr. Perez, due to your continued unlawful and disorderly conduct, please be advised that you have no right. Please be advised that you have no right, either expressed or implied, to enter inside City Hall, 425 East State Street, Rockford, Illinois, or enter upon the property located at 425 East State Street, Rockford, Illinois, including its interior sidewalks and parking lot at any time whatsoever and for whatever purpose. And this stemmed from, my fault, this just got started to me right now. This come from, I'm be honest, this come from, when was it? Yesterday? Yeah, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. I went back to the back of City Hall and I wrote in the spot where Carla Red had choked me, and I said, Carla Red choked me right here. And I wrote, a black woman was brutalized right here. A black woman was attacked right here. And I wrote, you will pay for the sins of RPD. So for writing in chalk, for writing that a cop choked me, I face more repercussions than she did. For writing that a black woman was assaulted and brutalized and attacked by damn near 300-pound men, I face more repercussions than those officers did. My fault. Let me know how the audio sound. We've been having some problems with the headphones, so let me know how the audio sound. This is not what this live's supposed to be, but as soon as I started it, he came and served me the paper. This is something new I'm going to be trying to do. Rockford research. This is about July 11th, 1981. I don't know if y'all are familiar with a cruise night. I believe they still have it. I don't know if they still have it or what exactly. But it's a cruise night that happens out in Belvedere. I ain't never been to it. But it's a cruise night that happened in Belvedere, that may still be happening in Belvedere. And this particular one, July 11th, 1981, was a traumatizing one, was a horrific one. And I'm gonna just give you some, before I get into this, the purpose of doing this research, the purpose of talking about these things, the purpose of going back in history and uncovering new things is to show that these problems are systemic. It's to show that these problems have been allowed to continue for decades. It's to show that it's the system of policing that is corrupt. It's a system of policing that necessitates the use of force. And it doesn't matter who the mayor is, who the police chief is, as long as there are some form of police agencies, there will be police terrorism. They're inseparable. They're inseparable. So just to give you some background at this time, the Belvedere mayor, at this time of 1981, I believe, I don't know how to properly say it, I believe it's Gaius, G-A-I-U-S, Gaius, Bud, parentheses Bud, they also call them Bud, Barr. And the Belvedere police chief at this time is William Redding. And the cruise night, for some of you, for those who may be unfamiliar with it, and I was before I came across this, it's like a car show parade, pretty much. There's cars that would be in car shows, just a parade of them. Just a parade of them. And let's see what I want to go. And in the preparation for this event, a lot of people promoted this event. A lot of people made money off of this event in the promotions and things like that. But nobody wanted to put their actual name on it because they were worried about legal ramifications. So it's not some type of thing to where they were ignorant about these things and ignorant about something may go down, it's the type of thing where nobody wanted to sign their name to it because they knew that situations may arise. Okay, so then let's see. I just want to get all the police departments involved. Okay. Before the cruise night had happened, before July 11th, a story had came out, and I believe the Rockford Register saw about how many police officers were going to be there. They had reported that it was 80 police officers that were going to be there, along with 80 other, and they called them supplemental police officers. I never heard of police officers addressed in that manner, but it was Belvedere Police, Cherry Valley Police, Loves Park Police, Rock Valley College Security Team, and state police departments. They was all part of the overall 160 police officers. And quick note, the Loves Park police officers, it was a SWAT team. It was a Loves Park SWAT team that was there in full gear. In full SWAT team gear and full riot gear. Onlookers would say, people witnessing say that before while the parade was going on, while the cruise night was going on, police officers in full riot gear were patrolling the street. In full riot gear, they said helmets with face shields, bulletproof vests, carrying long riot sticks and tear gas canisters. And that's just some of the things that they had on them. That was just what one witness would say. And as far as the mood and the mood of the officers, one person said, police were determined to, one person said, police officers looked determined to settle a score over last year where they were embarrassed, whatever that means. So it's 160 police officers here determined to settle a score for events that took place last year. And I'll be fully transparent. I'm not fully sure what took place the year before this, in 1980. But I know that assaulting people for events that took place a year prior is not any type of justice. Assaulting people, innocent victims, children, young teenagers, is not justice for crimes that may have or may not have been committed the year prior. Beating somebody up a year later does not change the fact, does not change anything or provide any type of justice to those affected the year earlier. I got to quote my fault, just a little bit all over the place. When I was going through, a lot of this research was done through old newspaper articles. So when I was reading it, it almost felt like it was I'm not saying I don't want to misportray this, but I wasn't saying I got any type of enjoyment out of it, but it felt like a TV show almost, so where I was reading it and I'd hear one story and I'd hear another story and it almost be, oh my goodness, I wonder what happened next. So it is one of the most craziest, horrific things that I've ever read. Okay, so someone said that police officers were determined to settle a score over last year where they were embarrassed. And Redding, the police chief, the Belvedere police chief, would admit they experienced some trouble the year before and they wanted to be prepared. And in their what their preparation meant was to have 160 police officers there in full riot gear. Now, when you have 160 police officers anywhere, it's cause for concern. When you have 160 police officers dedicated to one specific thing, the likelihood of violence rises, especially when they're patrolling the streets in full riot gear. Okay. So this next person would say Raymond Johnson is his name. I don't know if he's still alive. It's one of the biggest problems about doing this research is go back to the 80s, go back to the 90s, and a lot of these people who give statements, they're 20, 30 years older, so they're in their 60s, 70s, and I'm not sure if some of them may have passed or not. But again, I do think doing this research is important because Although this is in Belvedere, you can see that Loves Park is involved and Rock Valley College is involved. So that means, okay, across counties now. It's cross counties. Rock Valley College was involved. So that means people that was patrolling Rock Valley College went out to this event in full riot gear. Okay. So Raymond Johnson said police officers were beating on cars in the parade. That was his statement. So cars that was part of the show, cars that was part of the parade, were getting beat by Night Six, by just slamming the cars, telling them that everybody got to get off the road. Everybody got to get off the road. And he said Raymond Johnson said he was disturbed by the use of force, especially the number of people with heads bloodied by nightstick blows. Especially the number of people with heads bloodied by nightstick blows. So then he would go on to say, I don't think the trouble would have happened without the SWAT team walking up and down the street with all that gear. Violence begets violence. He would say he saw a policeman hit a guy on the side of his head, completely unprovoked. Completely unprovoked. Then a young woman named Teresa Kudlock would say police officers dislocated her arm and punched her in the stomach while she was complying. And older man named Bob Loft would say he saw a police officer strike a teenage girl in the mouth with a nightstick, a blow that left her unconscious. Nearly 100 arrests were made, with even more brutalized. The Boone County Sheriff at this time, his name was Dwayne Worth, WIRTH. And he said, this was his statement, this was his quote. After almost 100 people were arrested, after young teenagers were assaulted, after numerous people were left bloodied in piles, his quote was, at least 2 people were injured. That was his quote. There weren't many incidences. Redding and Worth would say, we had to. Our officers did a good job. That was their stance. And a young woman, I'm trying to get all this information out here before I talk about it. A young woman named Sue Doty, Doty, was witness to police officers beating on cars, and she was left struck. Not stuck. She was left stuck, rather. She was almost stuck in shock, stuck in fear almost, to where she was witnessing these police officers who she's been lied to and said that they're, if you're in any trouble, call the police. Well, who are you supposed to call when it's a police officer is causing violence? Who are you supposed to call when it's police officers that are wreaking havoc? Who are you supposed to call when the police officers are out here brutalizing people, beating on cars, punching people, beating people with nightsticks? Who are you supposed to call then? So she was left stuck. She was stuck. She was just seeing, and this is a reasonable thing. If police officers was to pull up right here and just start beating on cars as they was driving by, or beating on some of these cars that are parked, I'd be stuck. Like, what are y'all doing? I'd be stuck. So it's a reasonable thing for her to be witness to see these police officers beating on these cars, and for her to be left in a state of shock to where she's not even moving, to where she can't even move. So as she's witnessing that, she leaves her state of shock, and she looked back. This is all she did. She looked back for her friends. She looked back for the people she came with. That's all she did. That's all she did. So as she's looking back for her friends, as soon as she turned her back, she was struck in the mouth with a nightstick. Struck in the mouth, Struck in the mouth. She fell to the ground. She was unconscious. And then she woke up and she felt a police officer hit her again in the back. She was charged with mob action. My fault. One thing I didn't go over. I didn't say this. I thought I would talk about this in the finally, but I should say this beforehand. Is police officers there? They told everybody they gotta leave. They told everybody they gotta leave, but they did not offer them an avenue, a way of leaving. They did not give them a certain amount of time they need to leave by. They just told them they need to leave, and they started beating people. That was all they did. They say you need to leave, and the ones that didn't leave fast enough were beat. There was no time amount to. It was not like police officers said, okay, you need to leave in the next 15 minutes or you'll be subject to arrest. No, they said you need to leave, and then as soon as they said that, they turned around and started beating people. And a young man named William Eklund, witnesses would say he was attacked and left bleeding by police officers. And this is similar to one of the reasons why I want to talk about this, is because this reminded me a lot of this, reading this, it reminded me of what happened on May 30th of last year, or of what happened on May 30th of 2020, where people were beat and left in piles, where children were beat, yanked out their cars, and left in piles, assaulted by police officers, and not one police officer faced any repercussions. So the problem with ignoring history like this is it lends itself to repeat itself. It repeats itself. When you ignore the police terrorism in this city, it just continue and continue and continue. So William Eklund, witnesses would say, was attacked and left bleeding by police officers. He was reportedly struck in the stomach with a nightstick and then hit in the head repeatedly. He required several stitches and had a severe concussion. He was charged with mob action. Luz Park. A little background information on Luz Park. The mayor at the time is Joseph Sinkiewicz. I think Sinkiewicz. My fault. Sinkiewicz. And the police chief at this time was Daryl Lindbergh. And they had sent out his SWAT team after a request was made by Redding, by the Belvedere police chief. The request was approved by the mayor of the city, as well as city attorney Philip Nicolosi. Some of y'all may recognize Philip Nicolosi and realize some of the things and actions the Nicolosi family has done, serving as a state's attorney and regularly justifying in custody death and regularly justifying police shootings. Daryl Lindbergh's belief was his officers didn't do anything wrong. Rock Valley College immediately suspended its head security officer and called for an internal hearing. So right now, out of all these police agencies that was involved, it's a Rock Valley College security team that faced any type of repercussions. Out of all these 160 police officers, it's a Rock Valley security team that faced any type of consequences at all. Excuse me. In the aftermath of this, calls were made by citizens of Belvedere and other counties and people in attendance. Calls were made for Redding's resignation, for the Belvedere police chief's resignation. And calls were made for his resignation along with an independent review. And that is something that has been called for any time that there is a police shooting or an in-custody death, calls for an independent review. And there's some... how do I want to say this? there's some confusion on what it means to have an independent investigation. What I will tell you, an independent investigation is not having the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies investigate the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr. An independent investigation is not having the Rockford Police Department investigate the murder of Faustin Guaitico. Police officer, my fault. Let me hold on. Let me just get through all this before I say anything else. And independent review has been something that people have been talking about for decades. Whether that's independent review in terms of certain scenarios and certain incidences, or a citizens review board, a citizens committee board. And it's been put on the back burner. Is every 10 years or so, people say, oh, we're working on an independent review. We're working on a citizen review board. And this has been going on for decades, at least 40 years. At the next Belvedere City Council meeting, it had hundreds of people. Hundreds of people were at this next City Council meeting. Robert Eklund Sr., one of the speakers at this event, the father of William Eklund, said, I say this investigation, he's referring to the internal investigation done by the mayor and the police chief. He says, I say this investigation is nothing but a whitewash and a cover-up job. Ray Slade would speak at this meeting as well, and he said his wife, who was wheeling a baby carriage, was pushed off the sidewalk by police officers. So a young woman who was pushing this baby carriage was pushed off the sidewalk. Public property. And Ray Slade would say, my wife was born in Germany before World War II and knows Gestapo tactics. And these were nothing but Gestapo tactics. I ask for the resignation of anyone who backs these Gestapo tactics. So right here, what we're having is something that continued today, to where you have the Belvedere mayor saying the police officers did everything right. You have the police chief saying they did everything right. They have the internal investigation saying they did everything right. But you have citizens condemning it. The people in power, the people who are invested in the police officers, saying, the people who are invested in making sure no type of lawsuit comes against the city for actions police officers took, are saying, well, everything they did is correct. They didn't do anything wrong. It was only 2 incidences, even though over 100 people got arrested. And even more than that were brutalized. Okay, so an unnamed speaker would say, my wife and 2 daughters were pushed by the police. Mike Glass, who was the Belvedere Park District Commissioner at this time, who promoted this event, said he was ordered off his own property, his own property, by, he called them rude talking police. That's how he described them. Rude talking police. Next time somebody says something about language, I'm going to refer him to this Mike Glass quote. And after this city council meeting, a call was made to the Northern Illinois Law Enforcement Commission. And David Walker was the executive director of what would be referenced as the NILEC. David Walker was in charge of the investigation, the so-called investigation. That was independent from police officers, Belvedere police, and independent from the Belvedere city councils are government officials. But still, it's the Northern Illinois Law Enforcement Commission. So it's still another form of police officers investigating more police officers. It's still a form of people who are invested in making sure that police officers did everything right, are investigating the actions police officers took. David Walker would say, "Whatever I uncover will be reported." And that quote, as I'm reading this and going through these old newspaper articles, that quote almost got me excited. Not excited, but it almost made me feel like, okay, it's going to be some type of transparency here at least. If nothing else, it's going to be some type of transparency. He would say in the same newspaper article, he would say the NILEC will talk to everyone connected to this event, and he would say that he already talked to Belvedere Mayor Barr as well as the Belvedere Police Chief Redding. And during this time, while he's investigating this and going into the findings of this, Beloit would host their own cruise night, and the Belvedere mayor would be in attendance, and this cruise night would go without incident. And part of the reason it went without incident is because police officers weren't my fault. Hold on, let me say this correctly. Part of the reason it went off peacefully was because that nothing they were left to police themselves. The crowd was left to police themselves, to where the Belvedere police in the Belvedere cruise night, they went in early, and they tried to end it early. They tried to end the parade early. And as well as a situation in Beloit where they had their own cruise night, was allowed to continue until I think 11 or midnight. I forget which one. It was either 11 or midnight. Then everybody left peacefully, no incidents. So the question would be, is 3 hours really worth assaulting hundreds of people? Is 3 hours really worth arresting nearly 100 people? Is 3 hours worth 3 hours of time? Is that worth young children, teenagers, women and children being pushed off the street, being pushed by police officers? Is that worth damages to vehicles that was in this car show? Is that worth that? They was out there for one thing. The police officers were out there for one thing. You don't come 160 police officers deep, all in riot gear, to just make sure everything go okay. You go out there, that's a show of force. That's a use of force in and of itself. And Freeport would also host their own cruise night, and it would be without incident as well. And the NILEC findings. Here we go. This is the first thing he said. The first thing he said. And this just make you shake your head. The first thing he said, talking about this investigation where nearly 99 people were arrested and even more were brutalized. The first thing David Walker say is he criticized not the police officers, not the city council, not anybody involved, but the media. The first thing he do is criticize the media for reporting how many police officers were there. The number was released by Redding, and he said, David Walker would say in the same article, reporting that number can be threatening or challenging. So, David Walker is saying, by telling people 160 police officers are going to be there, that might be considered challenging. Don't you think having 160 police officers might be considered threatening? 160 police officers in one area might be considered a threat. I'm be honest, I don't want to go nowhere where 160 police officers are present. Something might go. I guarantee you, when you get that many police officers there who are institutionalized to use some type of force at any chance they get, they're just going to do their job and use some type of force. So when having 160 police officers there is setting people up to be brutalized. Having 160 police officers in one spot dedicated to one event, SWAT team, full riot gear, is setting people up to be terrorized and traumatized by police officers. Reporting that number is not dangerous in any way. Reporting that number is not threatening or challenging in any way. Reporting that number is a public service. It's a public service they did. I'm looking for batteries. Okay, hold on. Okay. Reporting that number is not a threat or challenging in any type of way. Then David Walker would also say he could not characterize the crowd as a mob or a riot. So right there, every person that was charged with mob action should have their case thrown out. Every person that was charged with mob action should have their case dismissed immediately. This so-called independent investigation said nobody can be characterized as a mob, or it can't be characterized as a riot. Then Sue Doty, who was beat to where she was unconscious, struck in the face, this 18-year-old woman, 18-year-old girl, should have her charges dropped immediately. William Eklund should have her charges dropped immediately. And everybody else who was terrorized by the police should have their charges dropped immediately. At least, the bare minimum, at least. And this was his recommendations following the investigation. He said, the biggest problem I have. No, hold on. Let me get through it. Let me get through it all. What he would say was, police officers only went through 1 hour of training as far as how to handle large crowds. The reason they only went through 1 hour of training is not some type of incompetence, or it's not some type of bad job by police officers. They only went through 1 hour because it didn't matter how they handled the crowd. They was there for one reason and one reason only: to brutalize people. People said they looked determined to get their lick back. Said they were embarrassed last year, and they had to use this giant show of force and terrorize normal, innocent, everyday citizens, everyday community members. So one of his recommendations was a police training program for crowd control and crowd control and civil disorders. He would say, police should keep strength in reserve and not a show of force. What do it matter if you keep the SWAT team in a van that can't be seen, and then you deploy them? What do it matter? What's the difference between having the SWAT team patrol and having them in a corner somewhere where they can't be seen? They're still going to get deployed. So far in this investigation, nothing has been addressed as far as the actions police officers took that night. Nothing has been addressed at all in the slightest way. Then he would say, his next recommendation was, the SWAT team should not be used unless emergency. Well, who gets to decide if it's an emergency or not? Police officers? police officers who would use force otherwise, police officers who are invested in using force. They get to decide if it's an emergency and the SWAT team need to be called. I guarantee you the SWAT team going to be called and terrorize and brutalize people. And his next recommendation was individuals breaking the law should be talked to on an isolated basis and not ordering entire crowds to disperse. And this next one was a little bit troubling. He said, a registered nurse should be assigned to the public safety building. The public safety building was also the old jail. So that made me think, was a registered nurse not ever in the public safety building? And this goes to show to a problem that happens today still. And one of the biggest reasons why I think it's important to do this research is a common problem that I personally have been witness to is people get terrorized and brutalized and have bodily harm done to them by police officers, and police officers are slow to give them any type of medical treatment, if they give them any medical treatment at all. On August 7th, a young man had his face pepper sprayed directly in the face, and he ended up being arrested. I believe it was just a resisting charge. He ended up being arrested, and the medical treatment he got for being pepper sprayed directly in the face, directly in the eye, was he was allowed to go to the bathroom and rinse out his own eye with water. At certain times I've been arrested, and it's been black women who were brutalized, and their medical treatment was going to the bathroom again and applying toilet paper to their wounds. It's been times where I've been in jail where a young black woman was denied her medication. And this go not only in incidences of police use of force, but in the shootings at all, citizen on citizen shootings, where police officers let somebody bleed out, let somebody just lie there. That has killed people as well. The neglect of medical attention. It was a situation that happened down here during City Market last year, where a young man had a seizure for 10 minutes. The police officer Mike Dalkey, Assistant Deputy Chief Mike Dalkey, had his blood on his hands. The blood of the young man was on Mike Dalkey's hands, and the young man had a seizure, and he was sitting at Mike Dalkey's feet for 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, was denied any type of medical attention or any type of medical treatment. Then he would say David Walker's next recommendation was some mechanism for allowing time to disperse and an avenue to disperse. So again, that just goes to show that. Then his next recommendation was cruise night should be held in the afternoon. What do they have to do with anything? What do the timing of things have to do with anything? It don't matter. I don't know. Some of these things just didn't make no sense. And his next recommendation was a definite rectangular 2-mile route should be established. And one of the problems with that, it didn't have no definite route or no definite location, is because nobody wanted to put their name on it. Because everybody was scared that police officers might brutalize somebody and it might be a lawsuit against them. So nobody wanted to put their name on this event. Nobody wanted to take responsibility for somebody being assaulted by police officers. So the reason for its poor planning, the reason for these things was because nobody wanted to put their name on it, because they knew people were going to be terrorized and brutalized by the police on this night. And David Walker's next recommendation was no entry fee. I have no idea why he recommended that. I have no idea. His next recommendation was the creation of a cruise night committee. Cruise night committee. He said, this is his next recommendation. All police officers should understand policy. That's his recommendation. All police officers should understand policy. And again, he harped on this point. City Council and Belvedere Police Department should work with the media, and the news media should avoid sensationalism. Reporting these stories is not any type of sensationalism, it's telling the truth. Reporting these stories is shining a light on these issues that have been around for decades. It's not any type of sensationalism or anything like that. And that's a problem that still continues to today, where you'll be punished for talking about the truth. You'll be punished for addressing the racism in this city. You'll be punished for addressing the white supremacy in this city. You'll be punished for these things. Denying history like this, not talking about history like this, covering up history like this is reasons why these same problems that took place in 1981 continue 40 years later. His last thing he would say was officers felt compelled to assert their authority. Officers felt compelled to assert their authority. Damn shame. Not one time did he address any of the actions, specifically any of the actions that police officers took. In this independent investigation, he said they felt compelled from the start to assert their authority. Police officers felt compelled. They said they looked determined. They looked determined. And not one thing happened. Not one thing happened. Nobody was fired. There was no more investigations. Everybody just got to go about their day. The only thing that would happen was the Belvedere mayor would say that I'm never having a cruise night as long as I'm mayor. He blamed it on cruise night. He blamed it on the citizens. He blamed hundreds of people brutalized on the people that were brutalized. So we're gonna continue more things like this, and more research like this, because the truth needs to be accessible. For far too long, the truth has been hidden in a corner and been left unaddressed. Belvedere Bruise Night. My body, I didn't say this, but they made shirts, and they wore shirts that said Bruise Night Out and Bruise Night, Belvedere Bruise Night. That's what they call it to the city council meeting, to the first city council meeting. They wore shirts that said Belvedere Bruise Night. So I'm just trying to get everything in order. Be fully transparent. I found this by mistake. Actually, I found this. One of the things I'm trying to do right now is to go back in history and go back to the 80s, and whether it's John McNamara or Charles Box or Doug Scott or Morrissey or Tom McNamara, the main issues are left unaddressed. The issues of police terrorism and mass incarceration and racial injustice are left unaddressed. The root cause of these issues is left unaddressed. The white supremacy that is rampant, that the city was built on, is left unaddressed. I'm not sure when the next one is. Not sure. I gotta find something else. I want to talk about at some point. I want to talk about Charles Box calling for more police officers. Charles Box's response to drugs being in the city was, "Let's have more police officers." What would stem from that was the scope team y'all hear so much about in the news. A scope team that regularly gets into high-speed police pursuits. The scope team was formed after that. The scope team in which Dominic Anise is a part of, that assaulted Denzel Duvant and shot Tyrus Jones. The scope team that was working this event, working City Market. So this is just a new segment, new piece of information. I hope this was informative. Belvedere Bruise Night. Belvedere Bruise Night. Maybe I'll do something about the jail. Okay, that was Belvedere Bruise Night. It is, what is today? It's the 25th. Oh, it's my mother's birthday. Okay. I'm trying to figure out what day it is. I don't know. But I got this. This was at the start of the video. This was started the video. As soon as I started the live and I was getting ready to talk about this, Matthew Williams, who arrested somebody earlier today, racist Matthew Williams, who regularly engages in aggressions and use of force. Ah, damn. It's a whole bunch of typos. For writing in chalk in the City Hall parking lot. My fault, I got my address out there. My fault. My fault. Come on, nobody see my address. I'm be honest. For writing in chalk, for writing that Carla Red choked me, for writing that a black woman was brutalized in this spot, for writing that y'all have people that go into this building every day, these city workers and these government officials have blood on their hands. We have faced more repercussions than the cops that participated in Bruise Night. We faced more repercussions for writing in chalk than the police officers who assaulted people on May 30th. The struggle continues.